Show where we continue to discuss things that are top of mind, and a 33% price increase in flour was announced by the National Flour Mills in June, and since then the discussion of locally manufactured alternatives began. Here to discuss such options coming from the UWI is manager of the University Field Station, Dr. Aib Mohammed, joining us on the Now Morning Show. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's definitely something we need to talk about, and who better than the person at the helm giving us some options, alternatives, and delving into what is really required, because everybody and their mother started to talk about cassava flour and cauliflower alternatives, but this is something that has been researched and has continuously been explored for years, yes?
For many years. In fact, there was a PhD study done on dried pumpkin flour at least 15 years ago.
Wow.
But that was done on the food engineering on that part of the campus.
Okay.
So this conversation is not a new conversation. The last price increase in 2009, but rice was the issue. There was a whole lot of work done on sweet potato muffin and Betty Crocker type cassava pone mix. But the problem has always been, how do you go from there to commercializing? Because a lot of these things have remained on research benches. The industry, the alternative, let's just call it the alternative carbohydrate industry, would have seen commercialization in around that same time, 2000 and 2009. But the beautiful thing about that particular initiative, that was under TABA, Trinidad and Tobago Agribusiness Association. So they treated those alternatives as products of their own, and they were not thinking purely of flour. So you had cassava chip, you had sweet potato chip. Then we got to the point where our locally produced sweet potato chips were ready to be tested on the most popular, in fact, the largest fast food outlet in Trinidad. So they had gotten that far. But now we are shifting the conversation to flour. And I think that conversation in itself needs to be expanded. To just not talk flour, but how do you take these products and build them into industry?
Right.
And research is perhaps the most critical, the sort of bastard child, but is the most important part of building these industries. Because some varieties that just may not give you the yields. There's some varieties. So, for example, there's a variety of cassava called MCOL22. If you look at it, the conformation is nice, it's high yielding. But if you don't harvest it by 7 months, I don't mean to be sensational here. If you don't harvest it by 7 months, the cyanide content goes up. So you can't go and just say, okay, I'm going to try that and make flour with it.
Right.
There's a risk factor involved there.
Now, one of the words that you used that struck me was industry. We're not just talking about creating a product in mass numbers. We are talking about industry means machinery, specialized labor force, quite a few things that may not have been in the public domain in terms of part of the dialogue. How close or far are we from those possibilities?
Yeah. In terms of mechanization, at the production level, there would have been some mechanization of the harvesting of cassava. There would have been some mechanization of harvesting of sweet potatoes. There would have been some testing of machinery for cassava peeling. Not only at the research level, but there was some piece of equipment out of Mexico that different organizations would have tested. But those pieces of equipment, I don't think up until this point it's not in the country. Because again, you're dealing with varietal issues here. If you have a machine that is designed to produce 50,000, that's a very high number. Let's say 5,000 pounds of flour a month or a day. Those machinery are pretty high throughput machinery. But they were design varieties to work with these machines. And if your varieties don't meet the specification of the machine, then you can end up with a machine that's just peeling out cassava peel, taking out a bit of the flesh, and your yields end up very low. Second, a lot of people don't know baby carrots. What you eat as baby carrot is not a baby carrot.
It's a carrot they cut down.
It's a machine that cuts it down into that. And over time, that has been worked since 1999. 97, 9, thereabout.
Okay.
And over time, they were just, okay, we have to tweak the varieties and end up and get varieties that would allow us to just scrape without a major loss of the, reduce the waste. And then they feed the waste, they use the waste for something else. So the waste itself is not, quote unquote, wasted, and it's not thrown out.
Right.
It's used for some alternative thing.
Wow. Now, those are challenges, like I said, the average man mightn't think of, because everybody is thinking of alternatives they can do as an individual. But what we saw coming out of articles and other conversation was the possibility of specifically pumpkin and green bananas being used to create alternatives. What you're describing is sounding a little bit of a process that is on its way, not necessarily something we can expect in the near future, is it?
No. With respect to the pumpkin flower in particular, that was something that happened. It was, so you had a freeze dryer. A freeze dryer generally give you extremely good end product. Some coffee would be freeze dried to maintain the flavor profile. If you use other methods of drying to end up with an instant product, you lose flavors, right?
So, Mr. Mohammed, I believe you're getting a little bit of technical difficulty with the mic there. So we're gonna put a pin in the conversation. We do still need to discuss the possible policy needs and even delve deeper into what we actually can look forward to as alternatives. So we're gonna take a quick break just to adjust your mic as we continue the conversation on alternatives for flour here on the morning show. If you're just joining us, we are mid-conversation about the possibilities of alternatives to flour, and specifically looking at the pumpkin and green banana options. We understand that there's a lot more that we need to get that on stream pretty soon.
Yeah. So we were at the point we were discussing the way the pumpkin, this recent, the pumpkin flour happened. As I said, there would have been a dried pumpkin flour, a dried pumpkin product that was about, at least, I would imagine, about 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
All right? But in this particular scenario, the one that is making the rounds in the press at this point in time, it was a project that, so UWI, there is a project there was some publicity on the Seeds of Survival, the SOS program. And so they were extracting pumpkin seeds. And they said, look, let's see what would happen if we took the pulp and put it through this freeze dryer.
Right.
And when they did it, they found that, okay, so they got a dry product and they blended it, they milled it, and they ended up with a dried powder, or people call it dry flour, a flour. And so it's there, it's part of what can become something into the future. It can be commercialized. But again, you can't market it purely as an alternative, because I don't think someone is going to order always might be a good challenge for someone who's involved in the food marketing side of it. I don't think someone is going to order, I want to get a pumpkin dal puri roti with beef. I don't think that's, pumpkin flour dal puri roti. That conversation is not going to happen right away. But we have gotten people to eat much better things than that. So,
well, valid point. And adversity breeds density, so to speak.
So there is it's a good starting point. So you have a product that has maintained the color. You have a product that probably have maintained the antioxidant content, because pumpkin by its very nature has a high antioxidant content in it, and it is a good basis on which to check. To get varieties now that you can actually commercialize. Varieties that will, that when you finish drying it and you put it in different food application, recipe application,
right,
you have a product that could take to the market on its own, not necessarily as an alternative to wheat in the way we apply wheat flour. It might find use as a composite flour. And I think a lot of the conversation is around composite flours, meaning wheat and the gluten and those elements of wheat is still needed to get the product that you are getting. It's not really 100% like a cassava roti or cassava bread.
Right.
The only product I think like that is the one that the Amerindians use. That's 100%. But then they, on their own, would have gone through a process of grating it, and when they squeeze it out, they would take off a lot of the moisture from it. And with it, a lot of the possibility of cyanide poisoning. And that is, I'm saying that because that is where some of the conversation is not being focused. There are technical aspects as it really, and that's where the research is important. That relates to the actual product in question. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, yes, possibilities exist.
Yeah.
But in terms of an absolute alternative, a complete alternative, we have to entertain the idea of combining what we have. So we use less of what is not
That's
scarce. Right. We have to look at the expenses, of course, and the specialized labor of machinery and mechanizing, that industry that the possible option creates. But we are not there yet. We have a lot more research. We have a lot more work to do.
That's right. And we also acknowledge that there are small producers who are, they're on the farmers market and they're marketing their products.
Right.
And that's good. Because you also want to to offer assistance to them. And from where I sit at UWI, we are now engaging the Homestead Initiative.
Okay.
And there is absolutely no reason that sometime in the future that we also provide the necessary support for those small entrepreneurs to be able to better market their product, have a more consistent product on the market, and grow their business. I think a 2-pound pack of green banana flour sells on Amazon for, I think, $15 US.
That's a lot.
I think it's just that. So you're looking at $50 a pound.
Right.
So $40 for a pound of green banana flour is not as popular as the cassava flour.
Right.
So cassava flour at $40 a pound. You can bring that cost down. Huh? So they're using a variety called MX, which is about 15,000 pounds of cassava per acre.
Ooh, we're talking numbers and larger figures.
Yeah, but if you're
talking
we have 11 newer varieties in the country. Some of those varieties yield you upwards of 40,000, 50,000 pounds. So 50,000 pounds, the quantity per acre of flour per acre is much higher. There is a possibility of dropping the unit cost, but it does not distract from the research needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to continue that conversation, I feel that in the near future we will have you back on as we continue to figure out the best approach. But for now, thank you very much for joining us,
welcome.
for enlightening us, and for continuing the discussion right here on the Now Morning Show. We'll be back with more.